Hello, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm your host, Dawn Davis, and this is episode number 25. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. If you're looking for more information about the podcast, past guests, want to catch up on previous episodes, or just want to drop me a line, it's all at the website, desertladydiaries.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries. This week, we hear from retired marriage and family counselor, writer, music, and plant lover, Evelyn Haggard. Hi, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast. Today, my guest is Evelyn Haggard. Evelyn is a retired marriage and family counselor, and her main interests are in the field of metaphysics, music, and writing. She's been married to the same man for 61 years. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And has raised 3 sons, and has 5 grandchildren and 2 great-granddaughters. Evelyn and her husband, who retired from dentistry 3 years ago, teach classes in pranayama breathing techniques and philosophy, and have created a meditation center in the casita on their property. She often plays piano duets with a friend to keep up with her love of music, and writing is a good outlet for an occasional inspirational thought. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I'm glad to have you here. We usually start the podcast with me asking, what was your first experience with the desert?
All right. My first experience with the desert was rather magical, actually.
Okay.
And it happened on Memorial Day, 1971. And our family was used to going out, doing things, but not planning them. It's what we called automatic driving.
Yeah.
We lived at Lake Arrowhead at the time, and my little boys, the 3 little boys, were in the back seat, and I was reading a book that had been given to us by one of my husband's patients. It was a metaphysical book, and it was called The Voice of the Logos by Edwin J Dingle. And I was reading it, and we kind of said, turn right, turn left, and it came to Highway 62, and we'd never been here, and so we turned on Highway 62, and I'm still reading the book, The Voice of the Logos, as everybody is listening to it in the car. And when we get here, I am reading Right Speech. But as we pass the Joshua Tree Retreat Center, which it is now, the boys saw the steeple, and they said, what is that? Is that a church, or what is that? And my husband pulled over, and he said, the minister here has the same name as the person who wrote the book.
Wow.
And so he says, let's go find out.
Yeah.
So we drove onto the property, and there was no one there because it was Memorial Day and everybody was gone. But then he saw someone come in through the entry, and he followed him to a house on the property. And he said, well, let's go check. He saw the man, he knocked on the door, and then he went in. He says, let's go check it out. I said, I'm not getting out of the car. So he did. He left the boys and I in the car, and he went to the door, and this lovely woman answered. And he said, we saw the name of the minister here, and we wanted to check out what's happening. She said, oh, are you space people? And he said, no, not really. We just want to know what's going on.
Right.
And at that time, we did not realize that the founder of metaphysics was in the other room, but he was very ill.
Oh, my goodness.
And this was his wife.
Wow.
That we were talking to.
Oh, my goodness.
And so she said to us, well, if you want to know more about it, we're having a convention in 2 weeks, but it's a little bit late to register now. So you need to go to Los Angeles to visit the headquarters, and you can register there.
Wow, I didn't even realize they had a headquarters in Los Angeles.
That
wow.
was their fun. They had a beautiful church there.
Okay.
And it was destroyed during the earthquake later.
Oh.
And they sold it. But it was on Hobart Street among all the other metaphysicians, like Manly P. Hall and Ernest Holmes, all this stuff. So anyway, the next weekend we got our little boys in the back seat of the car, and we drove to Los Angeles. And we got there, but everything was locked up. So once again, my husband says, why don't you come and we'll walk around the church? I said, no, we'll stay here. So he went around and he found a door that was unlocked. And so he went in, and there was a woman walking down the hallway. She was shocked.
Sure.
She said, how did you get in here? He said, through the door, it was unlocked. We were always known as the only ones that ever got in through the back door. We did.
Yeah.
And so then we went in and we registered, and the convention was to start in a week. Now, I had been, since 1968, I'd been very interested in metaphysics, and I had some experience of my own. And so I was really eager to meet people like me.
Sure.
And at that time, as you can imagine, there weren't many.
Yeah.
There were probably a lot of them. But they were probably
underground.
Underground.
Right.
And we didn't have the wonderful internet that we have now.
Right.
So my children and I signed up for the 2-week convention. And my husband couldn't go. He had his work, but he went on the weekends. And as soon as we attended the first breath class, we knew he'd come home.
That's
and
amazing.
that's the way we got here.
Wow.
And so throughout the years then, we would come out for different meetings, different metaphysicians, some wonderful people who they sponsored here, and we had many good friends. So then later, much later, we were ordained as ministers there in 1994. As I tell my students now, don't hurry.
Right, exactly. Enjoy the journey.
Yes, they start their classes and they want to get them through, and you can do it in 4 years. But I always say it took us from 1971 to 1994 to become ministers, so, it's
right, it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it's okay to be that way. So we became ministers then, and we served from time to time there. And then they switched to the Joshua Tree Retreat Center, which was very different, although they still carry some of mental physics there.
Right.
But when we did move up here in 1998, it was because of one of our best friends who is the organist over there, and we moved next door to her.
Oh, wow.
Sight unseen. In the house that we're in now.
Very trusting.
We were trusting.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember her meeting at our U-Haul truck, and she says, "Do you want to see what you're going to be living in?"
Oh, goodness.
but it was lovely. Although there were certain things that I didn't like the all white carpeting, which with my doggies that
and
doesn't
3
work.
boys.
And there was a full bathroom in the garage, which I didn't like either. Who in their right mind would put a bathroom in the garage?
I don't know, unless he was a mechanic and somebody said, "Don't come in the house dirty like that. Go outside."
He had been a college president. In fact, he was president of Kent State when they had their students.
Really?
Yes, that was the previous owner.
Wow.
But anyway, there were several different things that I didn't really like, but I realize now that they were very important, because now, having had the bathroom in the garage, the garage has become our casita and our healing center, our meditation center, and it needed that bathroom desperately.
Yeah.
So there we were. We were learning a new kind of life. We had lived in San Bernardino for about 21 years. And I brought several things with me, my plants and different things. And knowing that it was the desert, we'd been coming back and forth. But anything can grow in the desert if you care for it
Right.
properly.
Yes, it can.
So I did bring some of my tubers for the canna lilies.
Mm-hmm.
And I planted them out there, and everybody said, "Oh, that's not going to work. They're not going to grow here." And I said, "Well, we'll try it."
We'll see.
Yes. And I've written a poem about those, because 2 years later I wrote the poem because they were such a delight to me to see those beautiful yellow cannas growing all around. I'd like to read it.
I would love that.
Okay, let me get it out here.
And what is the title of the poem?
It's Where the Lilies Grow.
Okay.
You can understand the significance of that title.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
And what's the title of the poem?
The title is Where the Lilies Grow. In the desert where the lilies grow, the sun reflects on the branches of Joshua trees and chaparral. As wild hawks soar high and the bees hum their contentment, deep within the yellow blossoms of the canna. Lilies won't grow in the desert, the residents protest. The desert harshness only lends itself to cacti and wild asters. It is the fool who would waste time with such plantings. For harsh winds deplete their beauty, turn their bodies into dust. Then beware, O foolish planter, for in the desert where the lilies grow unseen by the faithful, well-meaning seers, there is a gentle stream of water, quietly nurturing the presumptuous flowers, cooling their roots with life-giving elixir. Where the lilies grow, the hummingbird flirts with the blossoms while 2 lizards go out for their morning stroll, past a large black dog with quiet creeping. They move undetected into the garden splendor. What shall we feast on today? One says to the other, unmindful of the planter's great faith in his garden. Shall we dine on a scorpion or spider, or recline in the cool, damp earth? All of the above, his mate answers as they enter the cornucopia of flowers. In the desert where the lilies grow, the sun beats down on the earthen floor, while a harsh breeze bends the lilies, blowing yellow petals into eternity. Stay fast, my lovely flowers. Trust in my love. Softly the living water washes their thirsty feet. I will not let you die. The two lizards stroll contentedly back home, unaware of the battered petals. As the sun begins to paint its bright reds and pinks on the horizon's edge, they snuggle into their space under a cactus branch while an owl hoots overhead. Come out, my little pretties. Come out and join me for dinner. In the desert where the lilies grow, stillness is shattered by a coyote's howl. A rabbit screams his death cry as hungry predators proclaim their good fortune with yips and barks. But unobserved within the darkness, a new root is forming on the lily, so that faithfully in the morning light it blossoms afresh, renewed in the promise of the precious healing stream. When the lilies bloom in the desert, a silent voice bursts forth in splendor, calling to all who would listen, a testimonial of love.
That was beautiful. I could just, the images that it conjured up for me, the lizards talking to each other and deciding what they were going to do. It's beautiful.
This is what it seemed like in my garden.
Sure.
As I watched them. And we had certain lizards that came out every day and did their thing.
I was just recording another episode today, and Sant is her name, Sant Khalsa. She's an artist. And we talked similarly that we get these certain animals or species that live in the area where we live, and you kind of just notice them all the time, and you're on the lookout for them, and when they show up, you just kind of stop what you're doing and observe.
That's what it's about.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So
Yes.
Thanks for sharing that. And ironically, it's from a publication called the HOWL, and they still publish the HOWL
Yes.
to this day, and it's from Copper Mountain College.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I've seen that around, and I have some friends who have actually submitted and had their works published that I've seen.
This was
since I've been here.
2001.
Yeah, so it's been
So
going on
it's
for a
very
long
early.
time.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
You said you participated in this when you were taking some writing classes at the college?
Yes.
Now, how did that all come about? Did you just decide I'm going to take a class, or did something inspire you specifically?
Well, I had retired, and I had time on my hands, things to do, and there were things I wanted to write, but I wanted to write them correctly.
Right. Yeah.
So I went out to the college, and it was a lovely group of people, and I wrote all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote.
Right.
But no books. I mean, I do have a book called The Tales of Ishmael. Ishmael was my dog, but I'm not certain anyone would be interested in it.
I don't know. People love their dogs. They might be.
Well, this wasn't a dog. Actually, it was an Indian fellow who was an ashram dropout, and he was finding his way. Anyway, that was just a story. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, that I do have. And then my granddaughter too. When she was a little girl, she had a wonderful tooth fairy, and she would write letters to the tooth fairy, and the tooth fairy would write letters back to her. So that book is called From Here to Eternity, and it's quite a delightful thing. But you know, for me, and I imagine artists are like this too, you create something special and intimate, and you don't want to part with it.
Right, exactly. Sometimes it's not to be shared.
That's right.
Exactly.
So that's kind of what these
And it
books
makes it more special to you.
I guess so.
Yeah,
Yes.
and the people that you do share it with,
Yes.
who are close to you.
And I still have her where she wrote the letters. Like one time when she asked if dogs had tooth fairies too. But
Yeah.
anyway, we had some lovely discussions.
Aw.
Later on, when she was 12, she discovered that it was her grandmother.
Oh,
Which was
it's kind of like finding out about Santa Claus.
yeah, that was one of the things. Yes, yes.
Nice. You started coming out to the desert here in the 70s, and then finally moved in the 90s, and now we're in 2018. What are some of the things that have changed the most for you?
Well, you know, when we came out, my very dear friend that lived next door was responsible for us moving into the house we moved into, was very instrumental in the music here. She had started things like Sounds Original People would write music and then they would perform. There was the keyboard show, all at the theater over here. And it was a total community theater. And so all of us would be singers, performers, all things, did our thing over there at different periods of time. That has all changed. We also sang in the High Desert Chorale. It was over there where we practiced and performed. And that changed. It was all right. It was all for better changes. I was a member of a women's group called PEO. I don't know if you've heard of it. And it's still here. It's a wonderful women's group. I was a member for about 13 years. Then I just had too many other things to do.
Right.
And
that happens.
I had to let it go. So those things changed. And of course, the Institute changed tremendously. When we left there, we started our Center of the Open Rose, it's called. And we intended it to be a meditation center. And we called it the Center of the Open Rose because my husband and I have taught meditation for many, many years. When we were at Arrowhead, when we were in San Bernardino. But when we were first teaching it, one of my sons was 8 years old. And we had been holding a meeting at our house. And when the people left, he came to me and he said, "Mom, are you trying to teach those people to meditate?" And I said, "Yes, honey, it's hard. And you have to do things a certain way." He said, "Oh, no. Meditation's not hard. I think it's easy." He said, "What I do is I sit in my chair, I close my eyes, and I picture a big white rose. And then I make myself very small and I go and sit in the middle of it."
Oh, my goodness.
So that's why we call it the Center of the Open Rose.
Yeah.
But anyway, it has evolved until now.
Sure.
And we started teaching mental physics there. Well, actually, when we left the Institute, we were teaching it in our home. But we started really organizing and teaching mental physics in 2010. And it's grown considerably, along with other things. We have other things, too. Mm-hmm. And for the first time now, we have a webpage. One of our members, it's very dear, has just put it out, and it's just now coming out. So we're very thrilled with it. I'd like to give the...
Absolutely, please.
It doesn't have everything it's supposed to have on it, but it has to have what classes we're holding and when they are.
Oh, okay. Well, that's handy for people who live here, for sure.
Yes, yes. And we have people coming from Los Angeles and from the Low Desert. In fact, some of my students are teaching down in the Low Desert now.
Nice.
And so we have very nice
Spreading
classes.
the word.
Yes, it is.
That's great.
So anyway, it's centeroftheopenrose.com.
And I will put that on the blog page of the website for the podcast, where your photo will be and a little bit of more story will be there. And I'll put the website there so people can find it. That's great.
Yeah. And then we're also in the process of taking donations for a Multiwave Oscillator. And I don't know if you've heard of that.
I haven't. Let's learn.
I hadn't either. I hadn't heard of it either.
Right.
In fact, I still don't quite understand what it is.
Is it like sound waves?
It's like waves. Yes,
Okay.
it is. And it was invented by Lukowski and Tesla.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I guess it could be looked up online.
Sure.
But anyway, what it does, and I wrote this down because I had to ask my husband exactly what this is. And he says, creates a broad spectrum of energy which establishes the original frequency of the DNA patterns of each individual. In the literature, a Tibetan monk stated that it does in 10 minutes what he had attempted to do in 10 years of comprehensive meditation.
Wow.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
We don't know. But anyway, this is what we're doing. We intend to have it in a couple of months.
Excellent.
And to be there and to expand a little.
Yeah.
Now, with our center, we have avoided any advertising. It's all been word of mouth. It's very quiet. But it seems like now we're getting demands to let people know.
Well, and that's a good thing. I just did my first 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat.
Wonderful.
And it was intense and it was challenging. And while we were there on the very last day, when we all can talk to each other, one of the gentlemen who was leading the meditations said that particular, I was there from December 16th to the 27th. So during the month of December, he said that there were probably during that time frame about 1,000 people just related to Southern California Vipassana Center, and they had 2 off-site retreats as well. So they had people at the facility here in Joshua Tree. They had us at the Joshua Tree Retreat Center. Yes. They had Occidental. there were people there doing it. And this Vipassana Center has 2 other centers in Southern California. So all that time, 1,000 people just in their organization alone doing this and learning this. And the more you talked about the oscillator, the more I realized how that would be effective.
We'll hope that it will be effective, but the Vipassana meditation is one of the most phenomenal meditations you can ever do.
It was pretty amazing, and I understood why you needed 10 days. And it was very valuable to have that 10 days, to be able to just practice every day for hours, because you don't get that opportunity in life.
We did it at North Fork before they moved their facility here. And when we finished, we felt that we had just started.
Yeah.
It's really very, very valuable. But maybe that's what the Tibetan monk was talking about, that it took him 10 years. I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you're feeling for all those sensations, or I'm not sure if it's similar to the meditation that you all teach.
Well, we do different meditation. Sometimes it's guided, sometimes it's silent. It just depends. And one of the things that is so important, I wish people would realize, is that mental physics is not a religion.
Right. I think
it's
that's
a way of life.
Meditation is, it's really, we're all in this together.
Absolutely.
And let's find a way that we can all just be here now.
Yes.
And so many interpersonal problems would be solved, and people wouldn't form attachments to things that they think are going to happen or are annoyed that happened 10 years ago. We would all be living in the moment.
Absolutely. Well, people have said to me throughout the years, do you think that you're going to get peace on earth with a small group like this? And I said, yes, because we're not a small group.
Right.
And we consider ourselves the church invisible, and it belongs to everyone.
Exactly.
Who is, well, actually everyone. I was going to say who is spiritual, but aren't we all?
Yeah. We are, in our ways. Yes.
But anyway, I don't mean to talk that way. But that's one of the things that has changed for us, that sort of thing. Of course, we've seen buildings come down and go up. I think that Yucca Valley appears to be much cleaner.
Oh, that's good.
You know?
Yeah. That's a positive.
Than it used to be, yes.
Okay.
And also, well, there were lovely people moving up here before, but I think there are more of them now. More people are discovering the wealth that we have here in the desert, and they're appreciating it more.
Well, and I think that's how I came here, because I'd never been here in my life. The first time I came up, I just immediately felt there was a shift in my body for me. And it was 3 months and I was living here. It was that strong. The pull was that strong. But the quiet was so, I cried because it was so beautiful.
I know, honey. Yeah. No, I still cry once in a while when I see the beauty. My husband and I get up in the morning. Now, since he's retired, we have this lovely time,
right.
You know. And we get up in the morning and we turn on the classical music station. And we sit at our breakfast table and watch the birds outside. We feed the birds and they take their little baths and the hummingbirds floating around. And sometimes that big blackbird comes down, but that's part of it.
Right.
And we sit there in the silence.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It really is. And people have said, you know what, why don't you move more into town? Why don't you move closer to here, closer to that? Why would we? Why would we?
Right. Yeah. You got it all up there.
We have it all. I used to say, they'd say, well, why are you living there? We'd say, because of the clean water and the clean air.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Coming from San Bernardino, you know, it was the air wasn't very clean there. And we did have our own well, but we couldn't drink too much of it because it was too salty. So we came up here. But why would you live anywhere else? But,
right. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much.
But plus you do have a freedom to be yourself. And that was the important thing about us not advertising or not trying to create something ourselves. Right. As I've told people, I don't care if anyone knows my name. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. Our guru Ding May says there are 3 things in your life. One of them is it doesn't matter. The second thing is it's none of your business. And the third thing is have no tongue. Be still. We were still living in San Bernardino when we went to the meditation at North Fork. And then we came out here and I missed it so much. I wanted that so badly. And then we drove over to Darmadina. I don't know if you are familiar with that.
Is that on Amboy Road?
Yes, you
with
go
the
out.
pyramids?
No, this belonged to a woman who had studied Vipassana with Goenka.
Oh, really?
Yes, and a woman.
Oh,
She had been
wow.
chosen by this master to be taught, and she actually it was kind of a place for a lot of women to go, and she bought up houses on the property out there. They're all pretty old, and she passed away maybe about 2 years ago. You would have loved interviewing her.
Oh, for sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and she established a center there, and our group did a silent retreat one time out there. People are welcome to go there. But we also now have the Buddhist Retreat Pradam in Landers. I don't know if you're familiar
I've
with
been
it.
there.
Oh, have you? Okay,
Yes,
good.
yes,
good.
I went. It was one of the celebrations that they invite the public to.
Yes.
So I had gone. I don't know. You may know Olivia de Hollaville.
Of course, yes.
Okay. So I'd run into her, and she said, "Oh, I have something for you in the car." And it was the flyer. I'd already had the flyer here.
Yes.
But this is how those things happen. Yeah. And I said, "Oh, yes, I saw that, and I was planning on going." So I went, and fortunately, she was there because I wasn't really clear on what to do. So she was very helpful.
To this day, we're not clear either.
Right. But she was really helpful with, giving the rice so that when they come with their bowls, you do the ceremony with the rice bowls and all that. So it was really a great experience. Yeah,
Well, that's
it was
another
wonderful.
thing. When they first bought this old farmhouse in Landers, where they are, when they first bought this, Olivia came running to our house. And she said, "There's a Buddhist monk here, and we're starting a Buddhist center." And so she took my son, Frank, out there, and they met Pradam. Mind you, this was an old, rambly house, and you can see what it is now.
Oh,
They built it beautifully.
It's
and so
amazing.
We used to get Pradam once a month to come to our meditation, and then we got too busy to go and pick him up and things like that.
Sure.
But I'll never forget that night when she was so excited. so you see, that's one of the big differences here too, and it's wonderful. I wouldn't say that Frank and I are Buddhists, or maybe not Christian, or maybe not Hindu, or maybe not Taoist, but I think we're all of it.
Right. And that's a great way to look at it. I
Yeah.
mean, instead of arguing about why the way I practice religion is better than the way you practice religion
that
or any
doesn't
of that
work.
kind of stuff, it's just pointless, really. We're all here on the same planet going through the same experiences. Why not make it pleasant?
I'm so glad you have that idea. Because
Me too.
I didn't really know what to talk about today, but I didn't know if I should bring that up. or
No,
not.
I think it's great because I think there are a number of people who either have maybe lived here for a long time and have the impression that it is a religion, or have driven by it a million times and don't even know that Dingle May was there and what he created. I mean, being there for that 10 days, I have not spent that much time on that property. So being there for that 10 days and just, looking at the architecture from Frank Lloyd Wright and his son and all those special things that are done there very specifically. And I think my greatest joy was when we would come out of meditation in the morning at 6:30 a.m. and the sun was coming up. And people were stopped in their tracks looking at it. And in the evening, the same thing. We'd get out about 5 o'clock so that we would go have our tea, stop in their tracks and look at the sun going down. And then we'd go back at the night for the meditation at night, and they would stop and look up at the stars. And that was just, it was like, yeah, I feel lucky to live here. You have to go home. But I get to stay and see this every day and night.
That's great. Well, Dingle May, his name is Edwin J Dingle, but his spiritual name is Dingle May.
Right.
That's what he got, I guess, living in, he was in Tibet for 9 years. Not 9 years, 9 months.
Okay.
And then he came to the States. He was an Englishman. But he had been looking for a place, for a retreat center, because they had their beautiful center in Los Angeles. And he had looked all over. But when he came out here, he was so taken with what you're talking about.
Right.
And he was also taken with the clean water. in his lessons, he teaches, in fact, the lesson we're teaching tonight is to get up and watch the sunrise, you know? That's what it's all about. But he tells the story that when he discovered the property, actually his teacher from Tibet appeared to him.
Wow.
And said, this is for you to do. So he had planned a new city. He called it the new city. The property across from where the Metaphysics is, or the Graduate Tree Retreat Center is, the property across, you notice, is vacant. It's sold a couple of times, but nobody seems to be able to build anything on it. But he had plans for a new city. He even had the streets named, and Frank Lloyd Wright had worked with him to establish that. I keep telling people, well, it was such a strong consciousness out over there. How could they possibly build anything?
Exactly.
Anyway, that was when he found that. And it was completed in the late 40s. It was completed later than he wanted to because of the war. And when they first got the property, there wasn't a road out there. You know, the military built the road and the communications and things like that.
Right.
And they built the road right through the property. You see, so they had the property across the street. He got a square mile. Square mile of property, yeah.
Wow. And you said when you and Frank had stopped that first day when you were reading the book and the boys were in the car and you went to the house and he was in the other room.
Yeah.
Did you eventually meet him?
No.
You never did?
He died in January.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
Oh.
We never met him. But, of course, we have many tapes of him and that sort of thing.
Right.
But sometimes I just think, why didn't you let us meet?
Right. So did his wife stay on property after he passed?
After he passed, no, she did not. She left. She was very dear. Mary Jane Dingle was her name.
Oh,
yes.
how wonderful.
Yes, yes.
I have to say, this was such a pleasure to meet you and learn all of this about mental physics and about what you're doing and what you and Frank are doing. It's just very exciting what you're both doing. Keep doing it. And thank you so much for taking the time to come in today. I really appreciate your conversation.
Dawn, thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
It's a privilege.
Thanks so much for listening to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast. I want you to know how much I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. If there was something that enlightened or inspired you, let me know by sharing it with me and the other listeners on the Desert Lady Diaries Facebook page. Next week, we'll hear from Lindsay Anderson. If you Instagram, you'll know Lindsay from her Wonder Valley Domes account. Check it out and follow her if you aren't already to get a preview of what she's up to out there in Wonder Valley. If you're enjoying this podcast, I hope you'll subscribe and share it with a friend. Thanks so much for listening.